I bought the silver rose pin for $2 from a cardboard donation box under the library stairs, and by 7:30 that night, the most feared man in Manhattan was standing in front of me like I had brought a dead woman back into the room. I only knew it was tarnished, shaped like a small rose and missing one tiny stone near the stem. It looked lonely, and lonely things had always had a way of finding me. My name is Clara Bennett. I was 26 years old, an assistant librarian at Whitcomb Library, with overdue rent, a cracked phone screen, and a soft spot for abandoned books. That winter evening, Whitcomb was hosting its annual charity auction in the restored reading hall. Dark wood balconies curved over the room, green-shaded lamps glowed on polished tables, and snow pressed against the tall, arched windows until Manhattan became a blur of headlights and white rooftops. Donors moved between rare book displays with champagne glasses in their hands, speaking softly about children's literacy while checking who else was watching them be generous. I wore my best black dress with a cardigan because the heating system had been unreliable since before I was born. The silver rose pin sat on my left side just above my heart. Mrs. Alvarez from Acquisitions told me it looked elegant. I almost admitted it came from a box marked miscellaneous donations, but for once I let the compliment stay mine. Then the front doors opened, and the room changed without anyone announcing it. Conversations thinned first. Shoulders tightened. Warren Pike, the head of the board, stopped laughing near the champagne table as if someone had pressed a hand over his mouth. I looked up from the auction ledger and saw Damon Vale step inside with snow on his dark wool overcoat. Everyone in New York knew his name, even the ones who pretended they did not. Restaurants, warehouses, private security firms, half the waterfront, if rumors were even half true. He was 37, white, tall, dressed in a black suit, his black hair swept back, his face pale and still under the warm library lights. Two men followed him, but he did not need them to make people afraid. The danger was in how little he moved. Warren hurried forward with the kind of smile people wear when they are greeting someone powerful enough to ruin them politely. "Mr. Vale, we are honored." Dante did not answer. His gaze moved over the donors, the books, the stage, and the framed photograph near the podium of Evelyn Ross, the woman whose reading fund the auction was supposed to honor. Then his eyes found me, not my face, the pin. I felt the moment recognition hit him, because the air seemed to go thin around us. His hand tightened once at his side. One of the men behind him stopped completely. Dante walked toward me slowly, each step controlled, almost unwilling, until he stood across from the ledger table and finally lifted his eyes to mine. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough in a way that did not match the fear people had of him. "Evelyn." The name landed between us like something dropped in a silent church. Of course, everyone in that room did. Evelyn Ross smiled from the photograph near the podium, soft-eyed and kind, blonde hair tucked behind one ear, a silver rose pin shining on the lapel of her coat, the same pin now fastened above my heart. For one awful second, I thought Dante was speaking to the photograph through me. Then I saw his face. He was not looking through me. He was looking at me as if I had carried something out of a grave and brought it back warm. "My name is Clara," I said. My voice came out quiet, but it did not break. "Clara Bennett." The older man behind Dante, broad-shouldered with a scar cutting through one eyebrow, went pale. Warren gave a nervous laugh from near the champagne table. "Mr. Vale, perhaps we should step into the trustee room. Miss Bennett is on staff here. I am sure this is just an unfortunate resemblance." Dante did not look at him. His eyes stayed on the pin. "Where did you get that?" I glanced down, though I knew exactly what he meant. The little rose suddenly felt much heavier than metal. "From the donation basement." That pin was not in any donation. It was in a cardboard box under the stairs with old bookmarks, broken frames, and library mugs from 2 directors ago. His jaw tightened. "Who gave you permission to wear it?" Heat rose into my face around us. Donors had stopped pretending not to listen. The quartet near the circulation desk had gone quiet. Even the fire seemed to crackle softer. "Permission," I repeated. "It was in a donation box. I paid for it." "How much?" $2. The scarred man looked away for half a second, as if the number had done something cruel to him. Dante studied me then, really studied me, and something in his expression shifted from grief into anger, so contained it frightened me more than shouting would have. Take it off. My fingers moved the pin by instinct, but I did not remove it. A ripple went through the crowd. Warren stepped closer, smiling too hard. Clara, perhaps you should cooperate. Mr. Vale is a major benefactor. I turned just enough to see him. A benefactor does not own my clothing. Someone inhaled sharply. Dante's eyes sharpened, but I did not take the words back. I had spent too much of my life being polite in rooms where powerful people mistook kindness for surrender. Not tonight. Not while a stranger looked at me as if I were responsible for his ghosts. I am not her, I said, meeting his stare. Whoever Evelyn was to you, I am not your ghost. His face changed. Only a flicker, like a lamp fighting a draft, but for the first time he seemed to hear me instead of the past. Then it vanished. No one leaves with archive property, he said. The auction stops for 5 minutes, Warren Tiffin. Dante, that is unnecessary. No exits, no storage doors, no staff corridor. The scarred man touched his earpiece and moved toward the front doors. I stared at Dante. You cannot shut down a library auction because of a pin. I just did. That is not authority, that is fear with better shoes. The words were out before I could soften them. Dante stepped closer, not touching me. Close enough for the scent of snow and wool to cut through perfume and old paper. You think I am afraid? I think you said a dead woman's name like it was the first honest thing you had done in 3 years. The room went still in a way that made even Warren's smile disappear. Dante looked at me with a grief so bare it stole some of my anger. His gaze lowered to the rose. That pin was on her coat the night she died, he said. So either someone stole from the dead, or someone has been lying to me since the night I buried my vow with her. The word vow stayed with me longer than the threat did. Not grief, not love, vow. It made Dante Vale sound less like a man mourning and more like someone who had turned pain into a private law and forced the whole city to obey it. Around us, the auction remained frozen in place. Donors whispered beneath the dark wood balcony. Volunteers stood near the rare bookcases with their hands folded too tightly. Warren Pike had recovered enough to put his pleasant smile back on, but it looked thinner now, stretched over nerves. The scarred man, whose name I still did not know, spoke quietly near the front doors while another guard moved toward the staff corridor. No one was shouting. No one was running. That almost made it worse. The room was being sealed by calm people with polished shoes and practiced faces. I looked down at the pin above my heart. Evelyn Ross Silver Rose, $2 from a basement box. 3 years of Dante's silence broken in one breath. I will take it off, I said. But I am not handing it to you. Dante's eyes lifted. Why? Because you keep speaking like everything that touched her belongs to you. His expression hardened. It did. No, I said. She did not. That landed harder than I expected. His mouth closed. The scarred man glanced over from the doors, and even Warren stopped arranging his face into something reasonable. I reached for the pin carefully. The clasp resisted under my fingers, small and stubborn, as if it had been waiting years to make trouble. When it finally opened, the silver rose dropped into my palm. Without its weight, my cardigan felt suddenly plain and cold. Dante held out his hand. I placed the pin on the auction ledger instead, exactly between us, not closer to me, not closer to him. There, I said. Let the truth sit in the middle. For a moment, something almost human moved through his face. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded black cloth, clean and immaculate, and laid it beside the ledger. He did not touch the pin with his bare fingers. Nolan, he said. The scarred man approached. So that was his name. Nolan took one look at the rose and went still. It is hers, he said quietly. No, Warren interrupted, stepping in too quickly. It resembles hers. That is all. Evelyn supported many artisans. Silver rose pins were made for half the committee that year. Dante did not look away from the pin. This one is missing a stone near the stem. Nolan's voice lowered. She lost it at the winter reading drive. Said she would replace it after the audit. The audit, I asked? Warren gave a soft laugh. Library finances, Miss Bennett. Nothing that concerns you. Turned to him. It concerns me if someone hid evidence in a basement and let me wear it in front of a room full of donors. His smile stayed in place, but his eyes cooled. Dante saw. I watched him see it. What audit? Dante asked. Warren spread his hands. Old administrative noise. Evelyn was passionate, sometimes too passionate. She mistook delayed transfers for missing funds. Dante's face became very still. You You told me the audit was complete. It was. You told me nothing was missing, nothing meaningful. Nolan looked at Warren then, and the reading hall seemed to narrow around the three men. My own world had become absurdly small. A pin, a dead woman's audit, a dangerous man who had mistaken me for a memory, and a board president trying too hard to turn truth into paperwork. Dante picked up the silver rose with the cloth and tilted it beneath the library lamp. The tarnished petals caught the gold light. "There is a scene," he said. Warren's smile vanished. "Dante, enough. It was the wrong thing to say." Everyone heard it. Enough did not sound like concern. It sounded like fear. Dante looked at me. "Did you know it opened?" "I did not even know it belonged to her." He nodded once, not gently but fairly. Then he pressed one petal with the edge of the cloth. A tiny click sounded. The center of the rose loosened. Inside, folded so tightly it looked almost like a silver shadow, was a narrow strip of paper. Dante unfolded it with a care that made the entire room lean forward. Without moving, I expected a name, maybe a note, maybe some final message written in panic. Instead, I saw numbers, dates, initials, transfer codes. Nothing dramatic at first glance, just old ink on creased paper. But Warren saw it, and the color left his face so quickly I understood before anyone explained. Some truths do not need language. They only need the guilty person to stop pretending. Dante read in silence. Nolan stood beside him, scanning the crowd as if every donor had become a locked drawer. I remained at the table, suddenly aware of my worn flats, my loose cardigan cuff, the ink stain on my thumb from labeling auction cards. I did not belong inside a secret that made rich men stop breathing. Still, the silver rose had belonged to no one else when it was pinned to me. "This is not a complete ledger," Dante said. Warren recovered too fast. "Of course it is not. It is a scrap. It proves nothing. It proves Evelyn copied account movements before she died. Before her accident." Dante looked at him. "Do not polish that word for me." Snow tapped against the arched windows, soft and steady. I wanted to step away. I wanted to return to the basement, to the box of broken mugs, to the safe foolishness of not knowing. But then I looked at Evelyn's photograph near the podium. A woman had worn that pin before me. She had hidden something inside it. And somehow, after 3 years, it had landed in my hand for $2. "Why was it in the donation basement?" I asked. Warren turned toward me slowly. "Miss Bennett, this is not your concern." I let out a small laugh with no humor in it. "You keep saying that. I am starting to think it means the opposite." A few guests shifted near the fireplace. Warren's eyes sharpened. "You are an employee here. I suggest you remember that." Dante's head turned slightly, not toward me, toward Warren. The warning in that small movement was colder than any raised voice. "Do not threaten her job. I am protecting the institution. You are protecting yourself." Warren smiled again, but now the mask had cracks. "And you are doing what, Dante? Protecting a stranger because she wore a dead woman's jewelry? This is exactly why Evelyn's name was better left untouched. You make grief look unstable." Dante flinched barely, but I saw it. So did Warren. That was his weapon, force. Shame. He knew where to press because he had helped build the wound. Something in me hardened. I stepped around the table slowly, not beside Dante, not behind him, but close enough to make it clear I was not disappearing just because Warren Pike wanted me small. "I do not know what happened 3 years ago," I said. "I do not know what that paper means. But I know what it sounds like when a powerful man tries to make a woman's warning seem inconvenient." Warren's smile faded. Dante looked at me then, and for the first time there was no ghost in his eyes. "Meet Clara," he said quietly, as if he were finally testing my name against the one he had broken himself by speaking. Nolan leaned toward him and murmured, "The archive room is still secured. No one has left the west corridor." Warren heard enough. "This is absurd. You cannot hold donors inside a public charity event." Dante's voice stayed flat. 5 minutes, you had 3 years. Then he turned to me. "The old ledger room is downstairs?" I nodded before I could overthink it. "Lower level, behind the children's stacks, past the microfilm cabinets. You know the archive system? I work here." He did not order me. He did not reach for me. He only said, "I need your help." I looked at Evelyn's open silver rose, then at her photograph near the podium, then at Warren standing too still beneath the warm lights. "I will help the truth," I said, "not you." The stairwell behind the children's stack smelled like dust, radiator heat, and old rain trapped in stone. I went first because I knew which step creaked and where the motion light took too long to wake. Dante followed a few feet behind me, close enough that I felt the pressure of his presence but not close enough to touch. Above us, the gala murmured like a room trying to pretend it had not just cracked open. The charity records were moved down here after renovation, I said, because silence made everything feel worse. The newer files were digitized, but the old ledgers stayed for donor history. Dante said nothing for a moment. When I glanced back, his face had gone still again, but his eyes stayed fixed on the rose wrapped in black cloth. Did Evelyn come down here often, I asked. His fingers tightened around the cloth. She liked old places, said they kept promises better than people. I looked away before the sadness in his voice made me forget how he had looked at me upstairs like evidence before a person. That sounds lonely. It sounded hopeful when she said it. The archive door stuck the way it always did in winter. I pushed my shoulder against it, and Dante reached past me without touching my body, pressing his palm flat to the wood. Together we forced it open. The room blinked alive in strips of fluorescent light. Metal shelves lined the walls. File boxes sat in careful rows. A covered microfilm machine waited in the corner like something no one had needed in years. I crossed to the donor records cabinet and pulled open the drawer marked Ross Reading Fund, 2018 to 2022. If Warren is lying, the backup should be here. Dante stood beside me, watching my hands move through folders. You do this every day, not possible financial crimes. Mostly tax forms, printer jams, and books about dinosaurs. For half a second, his mouth almost softened. You should not be in this. I was in it the moment your dead fiancé's pin ended up in my donation box. He lowered his eyes. I know. That simple answer did more than an apology would have. I found the ledger wrapped in gray archival paper, its spine cracked. Evelyn Ross's neat handwriting on the label. My breath caught the handwriting made the dead feel unfairly close. Dante did not grab it. He waited until I placed it on the table and opened the cover. Line after line showed donations from schools, church groups, retired teachers, book clubs, families who gave $25 and probably felt proud of it. Then the transfers began. Large amounts moved out under vendor names that sounded educational but hollow. Bright Path Outreach, Harbor Youth Access, Pike Community Logistics. Dante leaned closer and the color left his face. Those vendors connect to my companies, he said. Shells under my shipping network. I never authorized this. I looked at him. Would Evelyn have known that? He nodded slowly. She would have asked me. Unless someone made her believe I already knew. I turned the page. A folded library request slip fell from between the sheets. In the same careful handwriting were 6 words. If I disappear, check Warren first. Dante stepped back as if the sentence had reached some place no accusation ever had. His hand braced against the metal shelf, and for a moment the dangerous man from upstairs was gone. There was only someone reading the shape of his own failure in blue ink. She tried to tell me, he said. Maybe she did, I answered. Maybe someone's made sure you never heard her. Footsteps sounded above us, slow, polished. Nolan's voice came from the stairwell, controlled but tight. Dad, Pike is not in the ballroom anymore. The fluorescent light buzzed over the open ledger. I looked down at Evelyn's warning, then toward the door. The past had not stayed buried. It was coming downstairs. Warren appeared with his bow tie perfect and his wounded expression already prepared. This is disappointing, he said, looking around the archive room as if we had insulted his home. A public charity event upstairs, and here you are turning grief into theater. Dante placed the ledger behind me, making his body a barrier. Stay behind me. I looked at Evelyn's warning, then at him.
No.
We found proof because I knew where to look. Something humbled moved across his face. He shifted half a step, not in front of me, but beside me. It was small. It mattered. I turned the ledger toward Warren. Explain this. He barely glanced down. Old accounting confusion. I held up the warning slip, and his eyes moved to it for 1 second. That was enough. That handwriting could be anyone's. It is her, Dante said. Warren sighed. Evelyn was brilliant but emotional. She saw villains in delays and theft in every transfer. Do not make her clarity sound like weakness, I said. Warren's face cooled. Miss Bennett, you work for this institution because men like me keep its doors open. Children keep this place alive, I said. Staff keep it open. Donors put their names on walls. For the first time, Warren's polished face cracked. Not with panic. Olivia wanted audits, public reports, outside oversight. She wanted to hand a respectable fund to teachers, social workers, people with ideals. She did not understand how institutions survive. By stealing from children? I asked. His eyes flashed. By managing appearances. Dante closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he looked older, not weaker, just awake in a painful way. I spent 3 years blaming my world for her death, he said, and all this time it was yours. Warren tilted his head. Your name made it possible. Do not pretend innocence feels clean on you. The words hurt because part of them was true. Dante absorbed them instead of throwing them back. Then Nolan touched his earpiece. Independent counsel just arrived. Financial crimes unit is 3 minutes out. Dante picked up the ledger, the warning, and the silver rose with cloth-covered hands. Then we take this upstairs, he said, in front of everyone. We returned to the reading hall with the truth carried in silence. Donors turned. Snow tapped the arched windows. Evelyn's photograph waited near the podium, still smiling as if she had known the room would eventually have to answer her. Warren lifted his chin. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. Mr. Vale has allowed old grief to create confusion around private archival materials. There it was again. Truth made impolite, a dead woman made inconvenient. Dante stood beside the podium, not behind it, and laid the ledger down. 3 years ago, Evelyn Ross found irregular transfers in the Children's Reading Fund. I was told she was mistaken. Tonight, her pin was found on Clara Bennett, a staff member who bought it from a donation box in this library. Inside that pin was a transfer list matching the missing ledger downstairs. Warren stepped forward. Alleged missing ledger. Dante looked at him. Your initials are on the routing approval. The room shifted. Warren's face hardened. You are a dangerous man making dangerous claims. I felt the old Dante near the surface. The man everyone expected to answer fear with fear. I stepped closer and said softly, if you loved her, do not make justice look like another crime. His eyes closed once. When they opened, the choice had been made. He placed his phone on the podium. My attorney has copies. Independent counsel has copies. The Financial Crimes Unit receives the originals in front of witnesses. Warren snapped. Olivia was going to ruin us. The room heard the truth under us. 2 investigators entered with library counsel, calm and official. Dante handed over the ledger, the warning, and the silver rose. His fingers lingered on the pin for half a second before he let it go. By midnight, the donors were gone, the trustee office was sealed, and Warren Pike had left with people who asked quiet questions and wrote everything down. No one cheered. Truth did not feel like victory at first. It felt like air returning to a room that had been closed too long. I stood near the children's stack, staring at the empty place on my dress where the pin had been. Dante approached slowly, without his overcoat, looking less like a storm and more like a man who had run out of armor. He stopped several feet away. May I sit? I looked at the chair across from mine. You may? He sat across from me, not beside me, and I appreciated that more than I wanted to admit. I am reopening Evelyn's fund, he said. Independent board, public reports, annual audits, every missing dollar replaced by morning, with interest. I looked at him over my cold coffee. That sounds like power trying to become useful. His eyes lowered. It is a start. It is not forgiveness. I know. He took a slow breath. I saw the pin and I turned you into a question I needed answered. I saw Evelyn before I saw you. I used fear because it was the language I knew best. You deserved better than being treated like evidence. I held his gaze. Yes, I did. He nodded once. You were right to say it. Snow moved beyond the windows in soft white sheets. I glanced toward Evelyn's photograph. She must have been very brave. Dante followed my gaze. She was, and I made her memory smaller by turning it into my wound. I stood and gathered my coat. At the front doors, I paused beneath the brass donor wall where Warren Pike's name still gleamed. Take it down, I said. Dante looked at the wall. I will. Replace it with the children's names, the ones the fund actually serves. For the first time that night, something like peace crossed his face. That is better. Outside, the cold hit my cheeks sharp and clean. I did not know what Dante Vale would become, but I knew this. He broke a vow when he saw me, and for one night that terrified me. Yet he became human again only when he finally stopped guarding pain and chose the truth. And truth, once spoken aloud, does not belong to the powerful. It belongs to everyone brave enough to carry it into the light.